Professor Joyjeet Pal, Associate Professor of Information, School of Information at the University of Michigan, and he has had his fair share of trolling. Professor Pal, for the benefit of our viewers, let's quickly tell them what this is all about. There was a study by Professor Joyjeet Pal that political influence on social media has taken place in the Sushant Singh Rajput case. You downloaded about 7,000 YouTube videos with the metadata. Professor Pal, first of all, would you like to explain whether this is your individual enterprise or a function of your team? Because there is a lot of confusion about that also.
Yeah, this is work by a team with Zainab Akbar, Ankur Sharma, Himani Negi, and Anmol Panda, and we all are from various institutions, and we're all social media experts, and we study political social media. And so we were studying misinformation earlier, and we were studying misinformation around coronavirus, and midway through that, this happened, and there was a huge flood of misinformation around Sushant Singh Rajput, which made us take a look at what's happening here.
What did you find, Professor Pal? What were your findings?
Okay, so it's important that I preface that with what we did. Essentially, we took all the YouTube videos, what was going on Twitter, and what was going on in terms of debunked misinformation, and we laid that all out on a board and looked at what were the patterns that were obvious across all of these. And we essentially found that there were certain periods at which the discourse on what was being talked about changed. So initially the conversation was about mental health and depression, and the word suicide was frequently associated with the incident. Later on, it very quickly moved towards Maharashtra police. By within 2 weeks, it moved towards Maharashtra police, and then it started becoming towards personal slurs on the Thackeray family by mid-July. Then it took another track where it started becoming about a Maharashtra versus Bihar thing. And then it moved on finally towards being about the individual Riya Chakravarti as well as others in the case, and finally about Bollywood.
Yeah, Bollywood, and then finally about drugs. And I don't know, it's become a hydra-headed monster. Where it is going, nobody knows. But Professor Pal, where were you able to ascertain that there is political influence on the social media in the Sushant Singh Rajput case?
So there's a couple of ways that you can, the data will tell you this, and we've made the data available through the site, is
Would you like to share it with us?
Targeting of Maharashtra police has been very much more by BJP politicians. By the way, we only looked at what politicians and media persons were doing online. So that's about, let's say on Twitter, that's about 100,000 tweets, which have been posted by either a politician or somebody who's a journalist or media house. And there you have an inordinately high number of BJP politicians targeting Maharashtra police. And that was the first indicator that this was driving it. The second thing, which I think is a very important indicator, is that BJP is much more likely to use the word suicide or mystery alongside Sushant Singh Rajput than other parties. So, which is to suggest that one party more likely to either believe or propagate the belief that it was a conspiracy.
Now, Professor Pal, see, don't mind my asking, but see, this is how social media works from my limited knowledge. Of course, you're the expert. When people talk about certain things, then obviously the idea behind their entire concept is that they use hashtags. They say the same things. It starts to trend. It becomes top of the mind. Then it starts regurgitating and circulating. How can this, according to your study, prove conclusively that this is political influence? I mean, are you concluding this on the basis of most of these happening from BJP leaders? Is that your assertion?
Yes, yes, yes. An academic will not use the word causation trivially. So we are not saying that one thing has caused the other, but there is strong reason to
Sure.
believe that there was political influence in what was going on. That's what we're saying. That's what the paper says in
But it
much
could be
more technical
virality as
detail.
well. I mean, you know how
Yeah, yeah.
social media
So it
works,
is
Professor Paul.
virality. Sorry, yes, it is virality, but the point is that to make something consistently viral over a long period of time, it takes much more consistent effort. So if
Requires
you look at
planning.
the trends of virality in India, virality comes like every Sunday, the most viral message is Happy Sunday or something like that. So there is virality which is organically driven, and then there is virality which is driven by individuals. So you'll see some film star makes a movie and suddenly that's hugely viral. But that just stays for 1 or 2 days, because after that the PR agency ceases to be interested in it, and then the people in turn don't retweet it. Sushant Singh Rajput has stayed viral for an incredibly long time, and partly this is because the public wants it, and that's an important, very, very important, at least like a subset of public which is into this kind of thing really wants it. So all the news sources and journalists that we looked at, with the exception of 2 or 3 journalists, whenever they tweeted about Sushant Singh Rajput, they got more retweets than when they tweeted about any other subject. Well, the other
Yeah.
average subjects. So that seems that they are getting rewarded for doing this.
But I would again say that that's how social media works. I mean, you pick up a subject and when you see that it's getting viral, then there is a general tendency for journalists, and we're not talking about NDTV because that's not how this place works, but there's a general tendency to look for virality and then go with it, because that's a catchment area. You're instantly getting viewership, likes and retweets and engagement and impression, Professor Pal.
Yeah, and I don't dispute that. That's true. Question is whether there is a moral compass that needs to be part of what somebody's work as a journalist is. Politicians could do something for political purposes. I think it's perfectly reasonable for BJP to do whatever it can against a Maharashtra government because the political opponent. The question we should ask ourselves is the media in the same bracket as a political party?
Sure. Well, that's a very big question and largely unanswered, Professor Pal. But thank you so much for this analysis. Surely reflects a lot on how concerted the effort was that you were able to decode the metadata. Thank you very much, Professor Pal.